Right, lawyers under the aegis of Lawyers in Defense of Democracy have condemned DSS Director General Yusuf Bichi over what they called assault on the judiciary, lawyers and prison officials. The lawyers also condemned the arrest of Emefiele by the operatives of the secret police. The lawyers, in a statement by its leader, Barrister Okere Kingdom, called on President Bola Tinubu to prove that he has regard for the rule of law by suspending and ordering the arrest of Bichi.
All right, we're joined now from Lagos by Senior Advocate of Nigeria and member of the Godwin Emefiele defense team, Emeka Obegolu. With us here in the studio is our analyst, Frank Tietie, who's also a lawyer. Thank you so much, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Let's begin with you. First off, I want to believe you were in the premises right there at the court when the scuffle, unfortunate one, really, in the sight of many Nigerians happened. What are your thoughts about this? What exactly led to it?
Thank you very much. Yes, we were there in court, and fortunately, the Arise correspondent was recording all the proceedings live. But unfortunately, the correspondent was not inside the court to understand the reasoning of the court. Now, when the bail application was taken, the Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions within the Ministry of Justice raised objection to the bail, and he indulged the court with their concern, two concerns. Majorly, the first one was that they do not have the international passport of the applicant, Mr. Godwin Emefiele. And secondly, that there is likelihood that Mr. Godwin Emefiele will interfere with witnesses that they've arraigned against him. Now, the court in its bail order clearly dealt with the concerns of the Ministry of Justice by one, ordering Mr. Godwin Emefiele to produce his international passport and deposit it in court as a condition for bail. But when it came to the second issue, the court observed that the witnesses listed in the proof of evidence are officers of the Department of State Security. And in the wisdom of the court agreed with the defense counsel that the applicant, suspect, accused person, or defendant is not in a position to interfere with the official duties of officers of the Department of State Security. And of course, having addressed the concerns of the state, the court went ahead to grant bail in the terms as stated by the correspondent who is in court. Now, today is a sad day in the history of the administration of criminal justice and, of course, the rule of law. When we learned law, we were told that the courtroom within and outside the court premises is part of the temple of justice. Today, for the first time in my life, I feared for my life within the premises of a high court, and this is the Federal High Court. Now, the average Nigerian, every Nigerian must be worried. What happened today portends grave danger to the rule of law and the democratic principles we profess as a nation. Where do we start? Today, the court granted an order, and when there was an attempt to rearrest the defendant, Godwin Emefiele, the court invited, we informed the court was still sitting, we informed the court of attempts being made by the Department of State Security to rearrest Godwin Emefiele. The court invited the leader of the team to come into the court, and the court asked our team leader, Joseph Bodunri Daudu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, past president of NBA, to repeat what he said to the court in the presence of the leader of the team. Now, the leader of the team, when confronted with our allegation that they are trying to flout the order made by a court of competent jurisdiction, told the court that he has orders from above to bring Mr. Godwin Emefiele to Abuja. Okay. This is a state, the federal government, having produced Godwin Emefiele to the custody of the court. The court, in its wisdom, ordered that until the bail conditions are met, Godwin Emefiele was ordered to be kept with the Nigerian Correctional Services. Okay.
Okay.
The court signed a remand warrant that enabled the correction services to come to take custody of the man who the court has ordered them to take custody. And in the exercise of their constitutional mandate and in obedience to the order of court, a high-ranking officer of the Nigerian Correctional Services was beaten and stripped in the presence of cameramen. This is a sad day in the history of Nigeria. This is a day that we must regret and hope it doesn't happen again.
Okay,
Thank
we
you.
hope it doesn't happen again. Now, Frank, let's come to you from a live studio. In all of this, are we back to the era of the body language of Mr. President? Because you wonder why the president is so silent, so loudly quiet in all of this, knowing full well that the DSS takes instruction directly from the president.
The DSS takes instruction from a director general who appears not to be civilized. The DSS right now is terrorizing Nigeria, Nigerians specifically. This is unfair. Now, we are talking, in fact, even in the dark days of General Abacha, you couldn't contemplate this happening in the court. This is really terrible. Now, we are talking about the desecration of the Nigerian, judicial system. This is a direct confrontation to the very foundations upon which this country operates. Let me tell you, the idea of separation of powers, why there should be an executive that has powers to implement laws and then a judiciary that interprets what the laws are, and the sacrosanctity that whatever proceeds out of the mouth of a judge must be obeyed. What you see now is a direct destruction of that foundation. It's an invitation to anarchy. And who are we talking about? We're talking about a president that has lived that has operated for such a short time. And this is not about being silent. It's about, a plot to actually, bring down this country. And you see, it's not about Emefiele anymore. It is clear now that Emefiele is a political, detainee. He's been punished. He's been harassed by persons who clearly don't have anything against him, but simply want to punish him for whatever political views that he held in the past. But see, Emefiele is actually it's a reflection of the average Nigerian, whether or not he is a big man or a poor man, that is being really terrified at this time. Let me tell you, the president must, as a matter of urgency, there is no basis to fear anybody here, because we've gone through all this before. Where we've gone through military times, we have been through all forms of persecution in this country to midwife a democracy, and then we are now seeing a civilian form of oppression and dictatorship. So this cannot be accepted. Let me tell you, the import of this is this, that it means that order from which above, there is only one sovereignty in this country, the Nigerian state. It is not about who, it's not about an individual. Please, right. We have only one country, and it's very important. And again, if anybody thinks that it is time to gloat over Emefiele, he's mistaken, because it is every Nigerian that is on trial at this time. And unfortunately, this has become a persecution and no longer a prosecution. And it's damn shameful for us that we are operating a civilian democracy in this kind of Gestapo style. Shameful indeed. Right.
Let's bring back Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Obegolu. Within the Godwin Emefiele team, is there a sense, is there a suspicion of political persecution or victimization going on? From what quarters, really?
As a team, what we see clearly is clear violation of the tenets of democracy and rule of law. We perceive this as an affront to the Nigerian judiciary. We perceive this as an affront to the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration. There can be no greater disservice to a 2-month-old administration than such affront that sends a signal to the international community that this administration may not or do not intend to respect the rule of law. But I do not think that what the DSS has done has presidential blessing. I still think that the president will review what has happened and, of course, deal with it at the appropriate time. What happened today is clearly within the 4 walls of the Department of State Security. There's nothing to convince us on paper as a legal team that it has gone beyond the 4 walls of the DSS.
So let me just stay with you. The charges against Mr. Emefiele, suspended governor of the central bank, illegal possession of firearms and ammunition. How much of a smoking gun is this really for the DSS?
Well, in our view as a team, the DSS mandate should not include offenses that the Nigerian police prosecute every day, even at the magistrate courts. This is an offense that carries a maximum punishment, if convicted, a maximum punishment of 5 years. And of course, the Administration of Criminal Justice Act states clearly the powers of the judge in this case to grant bails when an offense carries a maximum of 5 years. So we think the DSS is outside their remit. For a charge such as what they've brought to the court, they ought not to have done that. The over 50 armed operatives of the DSS were present in court today to bring a man who has served Nigeria as governor of Central Bank for 9 years and is still serving, though under suspension, to court. A man who has no history of violence, a man who has no history of criminal offense. Over 50 armed men brought him to court, and they've taken him away. I think the DSS can do more, better things with their time and resources.
Okay. Now, speaking about DSS doing something better with their time, let's come back to Frank. The SCN spoke about what this portends to the international community about the willingness of the new administration to obey the rule of law. Speak to us about how this can be redeemed, knowing full well that the president is just barely a few months in office.
Well, we're always bothered about the international community as if we are not a sovereign country and that we can't run our affairs. We're talking about a situation before the whole world, before Nigerians, an official of the correctional service being dragged like that, being humiliated, his uniform being torn apart. So we've seen a DSS who don't understand that in the country like this, before a court, you actually take orders, and when you have any contrary opinion, you approach the authority. The DSS has degenerated to a point where it now goes to a show of force with another agency that also is licensed to bear arms. Can you imagine that? Because can you imagine that invitation to a contest of force and degeneration to anarchy by a state institution? Can you imagine that? And then what concern, and you think as an average Nigerian, what bothers me is what the world thinks about us. Whereas I'm seeing a people that are supposed to be the custodian of what is orderly in this country, inviting the whole polity into disorder. Let me tell you, when there is a contest of force, and whenever a Nigerian or any citizen of any country believes that he will not have justice, he will tend to resort to self-help. When you're talking about the creation of various forms of Boko Haram all over the places, and they create heightening security tensions, terrorizing Nigerians all over the place, because we simply think that rule of law is to please one person, and then there's this contest as if they want to break the law in order to please the president. What kind of thing is that? We have a country to preserve. Look at that. The international community now sees the reason why nobody should be, extradited to Nigeria. For goodness sake, because justice cannot be assured, even for a central bank governor. Look, so to be honest with you, this attempt to destroy this country must be resisted, even by persons that have been given responsibility to preserve it.
Right. So, Frank, let me stay with you very quickly before we wrap. Now that Emefiele has been rearrested by the DSS, what then? What next? What should we expect going forward?
I have always bothered about incompetent people in authority and who have responsibilities. If you have various charges against Emefiele, you must understand the provisions of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act that says that irrespective of the ground rule that separate charges for separate offenses are tried separately, so long as there is a continuum and there is something, there is a nexus in terms of the transaction, in terms of the facts, you can actually charge, or you can actually put all the charges together and try them in one court. For goodness sake, why punish the man? Allow the man his constitutional right to have the time and adequate facilities to defend himself. He is presumed to be innocent. For goodness sake, he's a Nigerian citizen. No matter how much you hate him, he's a Nigerian citizen. It is my right you are desecrating when you treat Emefiele that way, and I will resist it. And it's every Nigerian's right. For goodness sake, please let us have a country that we can love and remain in, and not to one that we're willing to run away from just because our law enforcement agents are the chief lawbreakers. This is unfortunate.
Unfortunately, we just hope that we just hope that there's a way out of this sooner than later. Mr. Mika Obegolo, thank you very much indeed for joining us on News Now.